Hello, everybody, and good afternoon to everyone who's in Asia, and good morning to people in Europe. I'm Kelvin Ko, one of the co-founders of Spartan Group, and I'm in charge of our investment business. But Spartan Group, more broadly, is one of the leading advisory and investment firms that are focused on crypto, based in Asia. So today, I'm proud to be here to share with all of you what's going on in the world of DeFi, and specifically on stablecoin and Curve. And I'm proud to be joined by Michael, who is the founder and CEO of Curve. So without further ado, Michael, why don't you give us a quick introduction about yourself and what gave you the idea to create Curve and what your long-term vision for Curve is?
Right. So for those who don't know, yeah, I'm the founder of Curve, and I'm in crypto since, I don't know, user of crypto since early 2014, I would say. But anyway, so for Curve, it was multiple ideas why it was created. One was thinking about liquid staking derivatives, so that's kind of pretty much joins the previous session. And another was that I was a user of MakerDAO since 2018, I guess, and there was a problem with liquidity of DAI all the time, everywhere. So basically, thoughts on liquid staking kind of led to finding the AMM for stablecoins, and I definitely felt a demand myself. So probably was the first user of my own product.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that introduction. A lot has happened in the world of stablecoins lately. We witnessed not too long ago the confrontation between Terra and Maker, for the title of the #1 decentralized stablecoin in the world, which ultimately obviously led to the demise of UST and Terra. What are your thoughts on that episode, and how do you see the stablecoin landscape evolving?
Yeah, I think it was more of a competition of different stablecoin designs. DAI is an over-collateralized stablecoin, but more importantly, it is collateralized not by MKR. It's collateralized, originally it was mostly collateralized by ETH, but now it's also collateralized by a bunch of stablecoins. But anyway, these are assets which are not connected to the success of DAI. And UST, it was collateralized by Luna, which is it did different other things, but UST was so successful that UST appeared to be the major use case of Luna. So basically, it appeared to be collateralized by the asset, which is basically linked to the success of. Almost predominantly linked to the success of this stable coin. And that's a problem, because then the design becomes vulnerable to this kind of death spiral or whatever. So in brief, like let's say if you let's say you can convert UST to Luna, and then you could sell Luna and make arbitrage, but this action kind of stabilized UST. So if market cap of UST was much smaller than market cap of Luna, and I don't mean like imaginary market cap, what you see on coin market cap, but real market cap, how much of the asset you can actually sell if you wanted to, right? So if market cap of UST was much smaller than that, then it probably would have been fine. But UST grew too large, and the market cap of UST appeared to be larger than its collateral can handle. It could happen to over collateralized design as well. So if somebody is doing something collateralized by crypto, they probably shouldn't expose the system too much to the to something which is like connecting to this project itself, or maybe they should have some safety limits on like how big could be the part collateralized by one or other cryptocurrency. Like, let's say if there is a cryptocurrency with a market cap of I don't know, 10 million, you probably would be pretty unsafe if you could mint 5 millions against that. So it really should be much smaller than the cap of that cryptocurrency. It's pretty tricky, like how to calculate this exact limit where one should stop, but in that regard, it's better to be safe than sorry. And with UST, it was, I think, in that regard, it was pretty unsafe. They started to diversify to BTC, I think, but it was a little too late. So if that happened earlier, that could have worked, I think.
Yeah, and I've also heard that Curve is thinking about launching its own stablecoin.
Right.
Can you give us some color into
yeah,
that?
I think it's about it? Yeah, I think it's better to probably to tell all the details when it's actually ready, although it's close to being ready. But I think, well, one thing is it's going to be over collateralized design as the most reliable one, I think. And the second thing is that we, based on what we know about how automatic market making works, we tried to rethink how liquidations can work. So it's something which, doing it some way which no one thought about, I would say. But that's probably all I can say at the moment.
Got it. Yeah, we look forward to hearing more details about that. And I guess recently, Aave has also announced its own stablecoin. What are your thoughts around why some of the leading DeFi protocols are choosing to launch their own stablecoin?
Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable for them, and I guess for Aave it's natural because they do lending, and the key to success of stablecoin design or collateralized stablecoin is liquidations, and they mastered the way they do liquidations, so they think it's kind of robust, so they can apply it to stablecoins. And in addition, like, why not just do lending? The thing is that when you do lending, then you have a lender and a borrower, and both need to make money, and the protocol need to take a fee somewhere. So, and when you do a stable coin, you just borrow it and pay all the interest to the protocol, so the protocol gets much more. So I think that's the reason is the protocol earnings for them. But if you think about use cases, when you mint a dollar-denominated stablecoin, it is mainly used to loan crypto, right? But when you have a lending platform like Aave has, you can loan crypto there, you can also short crypto, and that you cannot do with a stable coin, or, well, unless you do a stable coin which is denominated as ETH or BTC, but that I don't know, that's probably less useful in general, so you need some other uses, I guess. So I guess that's covers less use cases than lending and borrowing, but makes much more money. So I mean, pretty natural for them to explore.
Right. Great. Thanks for sharing your perspective on that. Let's shift gear a little bit and focus on the, the decentralized market maker space, right? And zoom in a little bit more on Curve. So
Right.
through, I guess, the second half of 2021, Curve and Convex were the talk of the town, right? And there were a lot of conversations around the Curve wars, obviously.
Right.
And many DeFi protocols begin to explore this whole concept of V-tokenomics, which you guys introduced, hoping to experience the kind of success that you did.
Right.
So in your view, what type of DeFi protocols should implement this kind of tokenomics, and which ones should not?
Yeah, so I guess I'm not sure about like which should and which not, but it's probably important to say why the V-tokenomics was invented at all.
Right.
And the reason was to create a long-term alignment of governance participants and the success of the system. So, and for that, my thought was that if you have voting power proportional to not just number of tokens, but also how much time they have left to in participation, then maybe their goals will be such that they maximize returns from these tokens, right? Over this long time, or have the token value by the time unlock comes to be high, right? This was inspired by how it worked in some American corporations when there was no such alignment, and this led to some disasters. So I kind of thought how to do better, and V-tokenomics was the response. The economic effects of V-tokenomics was not something was not something I directly thought of. Well, of course, indirectly you can say that this long-term alignment will create better decisions and better value and better participation, and it does. But apparently also it's good for token economics in general. Important part is that just making VE tokenomics will not do magic. You need to have also the returns of the platform distributed to VE token holders. So if you have these two streams, you have inflation or supply of your governance token, and you have also earnings of the system, then only these two can create a good feedback loop. And another thing which Convex, another can which Convex opened is bribes. Like in general, in real life, we probably know that bribes are not good. They don't lead to good outcomes. Question is, how can they lead to good outcomes in decentralized systems? Well, after all, it's an experiment, but the hypothesis is this: in real life, people who take bribes, they didn't pay much or didn't pay anything to get to that spot, so they monetize their power, their influence, their sway. But in Curve, you to get to that spot, you created you basically bought the tokens, right?
Yep.
And you locked them for some time, so you created this long-term alignment already. And yes, you are monetizing it, but you need to do such that your decisions, they don't hurt your income even from bribes in future. Because if you do something damaging, let's say somebody says, I'm bribing all the governance to destroy Curve, right? And I think bribe takers wouldn't take that, because that it would hurt their ability to take bribes in future and to get other sorts of income, and that's like really bad. So it's like hurting themselves in the future. Whereas if you have some people who are hired to as managers of the company, for example, you imagine you are hiring an outside CEO for some time, and some competitor maybe pays him money, and maybe he makes more money this way than by working in the company. But if he bought this spot for quite a price, then maybe he probably wouldn't do it. One interesting example would be, well, conspiracy, of course, but one interesting example would be when what's the name? Stefan Elop was hired by Nokia, and eventually what happened is Nokia mobile phones, from being like the first mobile phone in the world, basically become non-existent, and were bought by Microsoft, and Microsoft was the place Stefan Elop was originating from. So it's an example of some kind of misalignment, conflict of interest, and whatever, and we try to solve these misalignments and conflict of interests with tokenomics, and it can be wild, but I think it's important to if the space explores all possibilities, and this proves that the system is resilient, or maybe not. So we need to find out, right? And that's what's happening. Like and so far, it looks like VE tokenomics, although pretty simple, it actually creates some resilience.
Got it. Now, speaking of bribes, obviously Frax is one of the biggest spenders on bribes, right?
Right.
And the single largest DAO holder of CBX tokens, I believe. Now they've also recently pivoted to the V token model, and Convex has also created the liquid staking derivative for VFSX, right? So do you see a risk of this, I guess, bribery economy, for the lack of a better word, which currently sort of centers around Curve, sort of shifting towards Frax?
Not sure. It depends on depending on use cases and how important they are. So it's more about what they do versus what Curve does, and if it works on complementary markets, I think that's fine.
Got it.
It's not that it's not enough money in the world. It's all about use cases, I think.
Yeah. Okay, and then focusing a bit on sort of the AMM market. Obviously, we had Uniswap V3 launching middle of last year, and I think they've taken a bit of market share away from Curve,
right,
or stablecoin swaps. What's your perspective on this, and how does Curve V2 address this competitive dynamic?
Yeah, with stablecoin swaps, I think it's pretty clear. Like if Uniswap V3 existed when Curve launched in early 2020, it probably wouldn't work for Curve. But otherwise, the systems they have, when everything is good, when everything is on peg, it has pretty comparable performance, I would say. stablecoin swaps. Uniswap 3 took more volume by reducing the fee, but it appeared that we also could reduce the fee for 3pool because it is used as a base for meta pools, and it appeared that if you take into account all meta pools, reducing fee wouldn't really reduce the returns, but it would increase the volume, and it did. And yeah, it appeared that volume on Curve right now, it's actually for stablecoins maybe slightly higher than on Uniswap, but you know, when Uniswap reduced fee to 1 bips, then it took for a short time higher volume for stablecoin swaps than Curve, but then we reduced the 3pool fee and basically regained that position here. But more interesting is what it is for volatile swaps, for like swaps like between ETH and USD, USD stable coins and whatever. And I've seen a report from Delphi like yesterday, which compared Curve TreeCrypto pool and Uniswap pools which swap between volatile pairs. And according to their simulations, actually the algorithm for TreeCrypto should, in principle, lead to higher volume than Uniswap, but it's well, first of all, it has pretty complex math, so it uses more gas currently. We will look how to make that better. And also Uniswap also has many small users using their UI, and it appears that due to this, Uniswap has probably higher volume in these pairs. But yeah, so it's something fixable, and fundamentally the design seems to be overall better, if you can say that. But it's not clear if it's fair to compare these two things, because Uniswap 3 is probably better to use for some directional things. Let's say you want to be selling some token as it goes up, right? So Uniswap 3 is great for that. Maybe probably needs some small modifications to make it more convenient, but yes. So you are kind of expecting the coin to go there, and you want to be selling, or you're expecting the coin to go down, so you want to buy it, right? So this is something it is great for, I think. But when you want to do just market making, so you want to upload your funds and just to let it go, it's not good, because you need to constantly rebalance, and it's a complex process. Of course, there are projects who create rebalancers on top of Uniswap, but so far it is unclear that they are performing better than even Uniswap 2, so not necessarily. With in our case with Curve V2, it's all happening inside the actual math rather than via some external party doing discrete things. So that helps apparently.
And then very quickly, sort of shifting towards regulations, right? Obviously, given recent events, particularly with many of the centralized lenders sort of blowing up because of their exposure to Three Arrows, governments around the world have called for regulatory action, right? On crypto in general, but also on DeFi and specifically focused on stable coins. How do you see the regulations playing out, and are you concerned about it?
Yeah. With Celsius, it's actually interesting, because Celsius is not DeFi, it's CeFi. And well, clearly, I think I think where regulators can and probably will come up is when DeFi is actually not DeFi, when there is a custodian in the reality. And that's, I think everybody knows about that. If you're not decentralized, if you have somebody who holds the money, that's would be strange to expect regulators not to come. And with UST, Yeah, it's probably debatable how decentralized UST was, but it was not the failure of that. It was the failure of design. And I don't think regulator is even competent enough to figure out which design is good and which not. The only thing is, I think, if something is very experimental, users should be aware about that. And I think the key is to have as much information presented in a digestible form to end users as possible. So like, yeah, basically disclosures about how things work, no mismarketing. So something shouldn't be marketed as safe when it's experimental, but as long as if it's decentralized but experimental, I think it's okay if this works, but is like, marketed as experimental. And I don't know if regulators will come to this conclusion, maybe. But also, I think if something is not fully decentralized, it it can expect certain problems. But also, not fully decentralized DeFi is sometimes still transparent, and this transparency can help regulators to make these regulations easier than it is for fully opaque traditional finance. So we'll see where it ends up, because I think regulators are thinking what to do, and after all, they at least claim they have goals of protecting users, and in DeFi we also do want to protect users and to make it safe for everyone. So at least we have the same goals. So hopefully it end up with something good.
Yeah, totally agree with you. I think through this episode of the last 2 months, it's been clear, right? Looking at where the root causes of the problems were, that DeFi certainly come out of this whole episode looking much like a much better system than CeFi.
Right.
And then
exactly.
Yeah. So in the interest of time, one last quick question. Despite everything that's happened, as you talk to the bigger institutional investors, are you still sensing that there's a lot of interest to invest into crypto and DeFi and advance the crypto economy?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Well, there is of course fear, but there is also I think there is interest. But I'm not listening to institutional investors much, right? So for me, nothing changed. Like fundamentals didn't change, and some do understand it. So
great. Yeah, I mean, we talked to quite a bit of institutional investors, and obviously, yeah, I think recent events have scared people, but I think the ones that are more progressive in their thinking and understand the technology and how it can be used for greater purposes, sort of are certainly seeing this as an opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, this was a big stress test, and
Yes.
Smart investors will probably observe how this stress test worked and figure what is good and what not, and all the ecosystem will come up even stronger after this.
Well, thanks very much, Michael. It's been a very insightful conversation, and really appreciate your insights.
Great.
All right.